on the line, a journalist for an online publication called Quillette, which I've also done some work for, based in Portland, to tell us about this hate crime hoax. Thanks for talking to us today, Andy. I know it's in the small hours of the morning over there, so it's very kind of you to get out of bed and talk to us. Tell us, what is this story? Give us some of the details.
Good morning, Mr. Young. So at the end of January, tabloid news site TMZ broke the shocking story that Jussie Smollett, who's a gay black entertainer and progressive activist, was viciously attacked in Chicago, Illinois. It was reported that two racist white men had fractured his rib, poured bleach on him, and tied a noose around his neck. After they assaulted him, they shouted, "This is MAGA country." Now, this was pounced on by many, many celebrities and politicians, including some who are running for president. For example, Senator Kamala Harris, she came out and said that this was an attempted lynching. Senator Cory Booker also said those same words. Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez castigated the media because they used words like alleged and possible to describe the incident, and so on and so forth. Well, what happened over the weekend now is that after an intensive 19-day investigation by the Chicago police involving 12 detectives, it was revealed that Smollett likely paid two Nigerian brothers that he knew to orchestrate the hate attacks. Now, so far, he has denied any wrongdoing through his lawyers. That's the only comment that he's made, though.
And how have the people who leapt on this, the politicians and progressive activists, as an indictment of Donald Trump's America, how have they responded to the news that there may be more to this than meets the eye?
Well, the people who were the loudest and the quickest to be part of the rush to judgment are now suddenly uncharacteristically silent. The only person that I've seen, high-profile person I've seen respond was Cory Booker, and he was questioned yesterday. And suddenly he said that he was going to withhold comment until more information came out. Now that was a bit uncharacteristic for him, considering how within hours after the story broke that he repeated, calling it a modern-day lynching is, how more inflammatory can that get? And he also used the occasion to push for hate crime legislation as well.
So I noticed that on Twitter, I follow you on Twitter, Andy, I noticed that you've referenced a number of other hate crime hoaxes. And there does appear to be something of a pattern here, particularly since Donald Trump became president, of people, in some cases quite high-profile people, inventing hate crimes and claiming that they've been the victim of hate crimes, and it turns out that they haven't been the victims, or the people who've committed the hate crimes haven't been, white Trump-supporting young men wearing Make America Great Again hats. Though we should stress that this story is still developing, and Jussie Smollett does deny any wrongdoing, as you said. But tell us about some of these other hoaxes and what looks like a bit of a pattern.
So in America, I think what's very evident now is that the victimhood culture that was born out of academia has really mainstreamed in our politics and culture. When I was looking into the hate crime hoaxes have happened in the past couple of years, they mostly centered around right after the election, where there was this panic. Many instances of people making up attacks blamed on white Trump supporters, and then the other hate crime hoaxes happening on university campuses. I'd like to highlight a couple outrageous stories that at the time received a lot of media attention just because it hit on all the biases that people in urban progressive media, the biases that they have. So right after Donald Trump was elected, there was an Episcopal church in the state of Indiana that was vandalized with how Trump swastika and anti-gay slurs. And this really rattled out the religious community there. And then it turned out the person who did it was the organist, a member of the church who happened to be gay. And I have a story that there's a UK angle to this. Also, right after the election, a student at University of Michigan said that a Trump supporter attacked her by scratching her face. She says she was targeted for wearing a pin in support of Remain. Now, when her story fell apart, she later admitted to actually injuring herself. If you go on my Twitter, at Mr. Andy NGO, you'll see that I chronicle numerous incidents, and they build up to an image of what happens when our society and culture provides incentives for being a victim. And outside of the uncommon prosecution for faking a hate crime, you really have limitless reasons to be a victim, whether it's true or not. So you have instances of people going so far as to not just blaming others, but actually physically injuring themselves or their properties in order to garner sympathy, attention, so on and so forth. I've received quite a bit of backlash among some progressives for highlighting this because they feel like it undermines the fact that hate incidences do happen in the US, though rare, but they do happen. And I think, I hope that this story with Mr. Smollett will lead to a pivot in our culture where we start to maybe embrace caution and skepticism again. I particularly resent that Mr. Smollett, in his only interview on Good Morning America, sat down and said that those were likely motivated by racism. I really resent that.
Andy, you've attracted a fair amount of abuse, not only on Twitter, but when you've tried to cover anti-fascist demonstrations in your hometown of Portland. I think I'm right in thinking that you compiled this thread of various hoax hate crimes, and Donald Trump a few hours ago retweeted it. What's been the reaction on Twitter to being RT'd by the leader of the free world? Has that resulted in more abuse? Have you suddenly attracted lots more followers? What's that like?
Actually, it was Donald Trump Jr., so okay. A couple of degrees removed from the leader of the free world. But he does have a lot of followers and, of course, a lot of people who scrutinize him. So it just brought a new wave of people who tried to target me personally as well as looking at all the connections I have with, for example, my connections to Hoiland, which is to be expected, though. I think that I let these stories stand on their own. I really don't provide too much commentary on documenting what happened. So if people take issue with it, they're taking an issue with facts.
So just before you go, Andy, one final question, which is, I know you've explained that in contemporary America you can earn status points for casting yourself as a victim, and that is often the motive behind people who fake these hate crimes. But in the case of Jussie Smollett, is that the only motive, or are there other possible reasons why he may, and again we should stress that he is denying that he did fake this, but are there some other reasons why he might have manufactured this, paid these two Nigerian brothers to assault him?
Well, from the beginning, one reason why I was highly skeptical as the story broke, not just because I was skeptical, not just because the depiction of these attackers were so cartoony and screenplay-like, but Mr. Smollett has really deep connections in the Democratic Party. He's been extremely vocal about his hatred for Donald Trump as well as the supporter. He has compared them to Klansmen. Obviously, there was a political motive or angle to this. It's also been reported and speculated in the media that he did it to try to bring some attention to his career because his role on the Fox drama show Empire was potentially in question. He might have been written out, although that hasn't been confirmed, and the writers of Empire have denied that.
Right. Okay. Listen, Andy Ngo, thank you very much indeed for tearing yourself out of bed this morning to talk to us here in London. That's been absolutely fascinating.